I just don't know what to do to start my show, so that's what I'm going to do. Um, the United States Supreme Court nixes the bid to reinstate Bill Cosby's conviction. In a bid to undo last year's ruling that overturned Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction, the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, letting the decision in the lower court stand. Cosby was originally sentenced to 10 years in prison following his conviction on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault for drugging and molesting Andrea Constand at his home. He was more of these names. He was the first celebrity to be convicted of sexual abuse since the #MeToo movement started. His lawyers argued on appeal that the district attorney, Kevin Steele, should not have charged Cosby in 2017 because the previous district attorney declined to file charges and issued a press release announcing his decision. Cosby's first trial ended with a hung jury in 2017 when jurors could not reach a unanimous decision on his culpability. He was convicted at a second trial after the judge let prosecutors call as witnesses 5 prior accusers, 4 more than in the first trial. I have opinions, but I'm going to keep them to myself. Russia says they're ready to halt military operations in a moment if demands are met. Those demands include requesting that Ukraine stop all military action, change its constitution to reject any intention to enter any bloc such as NATO or the European Union, acknowledge Crimea as a Russian territory, and recognize the 2 breakaway countries of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent states. Ukrainian officials are aware of the demands which were made during the first 2 rounds of talks between Russia and Ukrainian delegations. Kiev has yet to respond to these stipulations. Russia insists that it was forced to invade Ukraine due to threats from Kiev. The 2 delegations are set to meet on Monday for a 3rd round of talks meant to end Moscow's attack. Now, I've painted this scenario before, but I'm going to do it one more time. If Mexico was Ukraine and the United States was Russia, and China came in and installed a favorable government in Mexico with the express intention of creating issues politically and economically within the United States would respond in kind to Mexico at that point, and China for that matter. So this idea that the United States is just this great, wonderful country that doesn't do things they're not supposed to do, and the level of hypocrisy in how this is being handled is incredibly interesting to me. The United States okays 2.7 million barrels of crude oil for release to ExxonMobil from the nation's petroleum strategic petroleum reserve. The move was part of the Biden administration's authorization in November of 2021 as part of a larger effort to boost the U.S. fuel supply. Gas has skyrocketed in the last week. This might cushion the blow of the rate at which it continues to increase, but this administration has no intention of increasing domestic production to either replenish the reserves that they intend to deplete, nor to help with the current situation we're in. Speeches were given yesterday by Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg, and it said, you don't have to worry about gas prices if you buy an electric car. The problem with that is the average cost of an electric vehicle is $55,000. You'd have to retrofit your house with a charging station, and between 10 to 20 years later, you'll need up to $20,000 to replace the battery. That comes from finite, non-renewable resources that are in Africa, where China is buying up every single piece of dirt that it can get its hands on. So please pay attention to what is going on right now. Wall Street's main indexes fell sharply on Monday, with the NASDAQ Composite confirming that it is in a bear market, as the prospect of a ban on oil imports from Russia sent crude prices soaring and fueled concerns about rising inflation. NASDAQ ended down 20.1%, the Dow ended down 10.8%. Oil prices jumped to their highest levels since 2008. While Russia calls the campaign a special operation, The concern on oil has led to concerns on higher inflation and potential for stagflation. I think there's just a broader concern that there may be a hit to growth from the consumer, even higher prices at the pump, said a senior investment strategist at Edward Jones. Wheat, corn, and oats are all through the roof. I'm not trying to be preachy, but if you're watching this show right now and you haven't been preparing for this, you need to do what you can now. Buy some bags of rice, team up with family or friends to purchase beef directly from farmers, start storing canned goods and dried foods. I'm not being facetious or dramatic. Things are about to get incredibly uncomfortable. And if you haven't been doing what's necessary to prepare yourself, I'm afraid you're going to be having a rough road in the near future. Lawmakers strike a bipartisan deal on legislation to ban Russian energy imports. The leaders of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee announced Monday that they had struck a bipartisan deal to pass legislation that will ban the product import. At some point, I'm going to get this and it's going to be fucking flawless. Will ban energy products from Russia. Jen Psaki said that no decision has been made by the president about a ban on Russian imports, and those discussions are going on internally. With who? Who's having these discussions? The legislative agreement in Congress also calls for a suspension in normal trade relations with Russia and its ally Belarus. The bill would provide the president with the authority to increase tariffs on products from those two countries and would require the United States Trade Representative to seek the suspension of Russia's participation in the World Trade Organization. The people responsible for this legislation include Richard Neal, who's a Democrat from Massachusetts, Kevin Brady, who's a Republican from Texas, Ron Wyden, who's a Democrat from Oregon, and Mike Crapo, who is a Republican from Idaho. Quote, while Congress needs to do more, as the congressional leaders with jurisdiction over our nation's trade policy, we are committed to using the tools at our disposal to stop Russia's unconscionable and unjust war on Ukraine and to hold Belarus accountable for its involvement. I got a comment yesterday about hiding my bias in my show and how I'm not doing a very good job of it. But here's my problem. This is a bipartisan effort, right? Let me explain. Congress's job is not to be worrying about Ukraine and Belarus. Congress's job is to represent the people of the United States of America. And right now, you're not doing that. I just paid $4.25 for a gallon of gas yesterday, and the day before it was $3.78. Your job is to see to the well-being of this country, not other countries. So I need you guys to keep that in mind moving forward. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. It doesn't matter to me. You're all the same, and you're doing nothing to help the citizens in this country right now. The Pentagon has asked the Supreme Court to block an order on deployment of SEALs who refuse the COVID vaccine. Lloyd Austin asked the Supreme Court to block part of a lower order that prevents the Navy from restricting the deployment of Navy SEALs who refuse to get the COVID vaccine. The order usurps the Navy's authority to decide when service members should be deployed to execute some of the military's most sensitive and dangerous missions. A federal judge in Texas ruled that the Navy must allow members of the elite Spec Ops community to opt out of the vaccine requirement if they have religious objections. His order also forbids their commanders from making any changes to their military assignments based on their refusal to be vaccinated. That's the portion of the order that Austin once blocked. Now, come on. You're telling me you send these dudes in when shit hits the fan, bullets flying, bombs going off, you're afraid to deploy them because of COVID, but you aren't afraid to deploy them with a vaccine that's been known to target their age demographic with myocarditis? Nah. You just want to punish them by reassigning them to units that are less than elite because they won't comply with you. Even mild COVID is linked to brain damage, scans show. During at least the first few months following a coronavirus infection, subtle tissue damage, and accelerated losses in brain regions tied to the sense of smell, as well as a small loss in the brain's overall volume. Having mild COVID is also associated with a cognitive function deficit. University of Oxford investigators on that leading COVID researchers consider particularly important because it's the first study of the disease's potential impact on the brain that's based on both scans that were taken before and after participants contracted the virus. An associate professor at the Nuffield Department of Clinical Neuroscience at Oxford University said, "It is brain damage, but it's possible that it's reversible. It is still relatively scary because it was in mildly infected people. The study offers no indication whether a COVID vaccination would mitigate the risk of such changes. On cognitive function tests, those who had COVID demonstrated a slower ability to process information and had lower marks on what is known as executive function, which is an umbrella measure of the brain's ability to manage complex tasks. These deficits were more pronounced among older individuals, and they are now studying whether or not these patients could further deteriorate over time." Don't forget, this virus was funded by the United States in a lab in Wuhan, China, with your tax dollars unleashed upon you. Your own government did this to you and your families, and I'm not sure why anyone ever listened to a single thing they say anymore. That is your Tuesday edition of Everything Yesterday This Morning. I love you guys. I hope you have a great day. See you soon.